Hey, this is Madalyn Sklar.
And Suze Cooper, and you're listening to All Things Audio. Social audio news. It's slow, right?
It's been a slow week for social audio. There hasn't been very much going on. I mean, we always have our ear to the ground, and so do so many of our friends that are always filling us in on what they uncover. But it seems like this one piece of news we're going to talk about today is not specifically about Spaces audio. It's more about the new X video, but something that's I think is pretty cool and hopefully will translate over to Spaces.
I think it was Morgan who actually highlighted this one to us. So this tweet from X News Daily shows that timestamps are going live on video. So they're testing this out on video posts so that when you type in a timestamp, someone can then tap on that and go straight to that point in the video. Now, why are we talking about video on a social audio show? Well, this is something that we actually discussed that would have been quite a nice feature to have with the Spaces replays, right, Madalyn? There was a time when I used to send out, and I think I did it for a few weeks, but it was fairly time consuming, but I used to try and send out like timestamps for the replay so that people could jump to whichever story we were talking about, right? And what I really was trying to get at with the Spaces team was that it would be great if someone could then just click on that timestamp and be taken straight to it within the audio. Well, that's what they seem to be doing with video, which is really quite exciting. I mean, it's quite cool to see it happen with video, right?
Oh, absolutely. I've been noticing this with some different videos here on the X platform. And I was wondering, like, how are they doing that? Is it just some new magic thing we have not heard about? And in this post that we have in the Nest from X News Daily, they actually show how you can do this. It's just a matter of putting the time in, and it will automatically make it clickable. So it's a hyperlink, but it's in iOS right now. So that's the only thing. It's an iOS thing. But, wouldn't it be cool if they made this available in Spaces? And I noticed that Jennifer Navarrete even commented on this post. And I'm going to put that in the Nest because I thought, would something like this come to Spaces? Wouldn't that be amazing if this was a feature that was built in?
Yeah, I really do think it would be a very cool thing to have. I mean, even in podcasting, having chapter markers and having those kind of live timestamps, you can create timestamps in Otter when you're doing a transcript. People like to be able to section out the audio or the content that they're in to be able to find the bit that they're truly interested in. We see it on YouTube all the time, right? And clearly, Elon is trying to compete somehow in his mind with YouTube when he's doing this with video. So I guess he's trying to give the same kind of experience over here as you would get over there with video, because that's what he's all in on. Now, whether or not this becomes a Spaces feature is another thing, and also opens up that even wider question around, well, what about Spaces? Because we do hear a heck of a lot about video here on X, and it does all seem to very much be video-led. And I'm starting to wonder, Madalyn, if actually social audio and Spaces just becomes a video live stream, but with your camera off.
Ooh, that's an interesting way of looking at it. It's hard to say. Where's this going? Think back to where we were a year ago on this platform to where we're at today, or even 6 months ago. Yeah, interesting. But it makes me think of the whole live streaming on iOS and how you could do just live audio, which was basically the Periscope, the live stream, but turning off your camera. But nobody did it. And it's like, did they not know you could do it? Or were they just not interested in that? I know that's something you and I played around with several years ago when we realized that was a feature. And it's still a feature here. It hasn't gone away.
Yeah, the audio only, which you can do live, is still there. It's not Spaces, but it is effectively a video live stream, but without the video on, right? Which is exactly what I was just saying. But I just wonder whether or not we've gone, as you say, from seeing social audio as very much kind of a forefront feature in the app. And, you know, it had its own team. It had a real buzz about it. There was lots of community around it. Obviously, that was kind of removed with the whole change of the app from Twitter to X. And while Spaces hasn't gone away, it certainly hasn't been, pushed up. It hasn't been pushed on in any particular way. And we're not seeing any particular moves around where it might be heading. So yeah, it's great that it's here, but in the long term, does it just get swallowed up into Elon's vision, which is very video driven? And I think that's what we have to think about. And I'd love to hear people's views on that when we open the mics in a bit.
Yeah, definitely. It's going to be interesting to see how that's going to play out.
I was going to talk about my new microphone, which I know Michael was put in the Spaces chat. He's eager to hear what it is. Shall I tell you the story of my mic?
Yes,
Are you ready for this?
Yes, we're audio geeks and we need to talk about some geekery because there's no other really social audio news to report.
Sure. So I have been completely mesmerised by the fact that this microphone comes in lots of different colours. Which sounds so daft because I am generally at heart someone who will buy something for its sound quality and not necessarily because of what it looks like, but because of what it sounds like. Okay. But I had actually had the experience of trying this microphone out a couple of times before, and it's astonishing actually at how I found that it can cut out background noise. So this is a Sontronics Podcast Pro that I'm on at the moment, and the fact that it comes in blue just has made my day, and it sounds good. So you know, it's got both things going for it. I've found out about these microphones actually at the podcast show in London, not this year's one, but last year's one. The lovely people were there on the stand. Their microphones caught my eye. We were kitting out the co-working space where I work, and we bought a couple of these microphones. And honestly, the co-working space where I am, it strangely shares its office space with a hotel. Okay. And the little podcast studio that they have got set up there is fantastic, but it is one of the rooms off a corridor of a hotel, busy hotel with a lift going up and down and all that kind of stuff happening. And I honestly did an interview in there with someone, and there was a wedding going on in the hotel, and I was really, really concerned about how this audio was going to come out and if we were going to be able to use it. But actually, the microphones were so good that yes, there was some soundproofing in the room, but the microphones were very much directional, taking our voices, very much focused on the vocal. And yeah, the sound that came out of it at the other end, I was extremely impressed with. So I have now got one all of my own in my new office.
I love it. And that blue is gorgeous. That I would buy it just because it's so pretty to look at. I'd be like staring at it all the time. That is a good looking microphone.
Another point about purchasing this particular microphone, as much as I would love to own the Shure SM7B or a Neumann or something amazing like that, or one of the studio mics like we used to have at the radio station, I just don't have the studio space, the professionally sound treated space to do justice to that microphone. And you know what? If I invested in one of those microphones, they are so hot and they are, so amazing at what they do. They would pick up every little sound and it would be useless. I'd be forever trying to take out mouth noises and, all the background stuff, because that's what they're there for. They're there to pick it all up, and they're there to be used in a really kind of professionally sound treated area. Now, we can do what we can with acoustic sound blankets, or maybe even with a duvet and a clothes era, which is where I started when I was doing voiceover. I used to stand under that for hours, recording, gaming lines and things like that. But in the end, the microphone kind of has to fit the space as much as anything else. So there's no point kind of investing hundreds and hundreds of pounds or dollars in all this fancy tech if actually it's just going to pick up a whole load of noise floor because your space just is not as soundproofed as a professional studio would be, which is exactly as you would expect it. So, this microphone, Sontronics kind of sell it as a streamer's mic. It's good for gaming, it's good for podcasting, and, it's affordable. And that was another reason why I thought, hey, it's affordable and it's blue and I can try it out in my space. And I think that's something to kind of bear in mind as well. Like, as I say, I would love to invest in one of those fancy mics, but I just know I would just spend an awfully long time getting frustrated with it because I just don't have the space, the treated space for it.
Right. Well, what's interesting, when I switched to the Shure SM7B, it was because I felt like too much background sound was being picked up from my Heil PR40, and I had not experienced that previously in my office space, but it was from the office space I had the one before when I had moved back home to take care of my mom. But they were similar spaces, and both of them carpeted, both had, furniture and things. And I was surprised that to me, it felt a little more echoey in my last place. So after just hearing other people on their podcast mics and just hearing consistently that the Shure SM7B sounded to me like it doesn't pick up a lot of the background noise. So I decided to invest and try it, and I immediately noticed a difference when I switched to that. So I don't know. I mean, you were saying that microphone would pick up more background sounds?
It could do, but I think, Michael's probably, I'm going to bring Michael in here because I know he's got all the knowledge that I need. Most certainly, cheaper microphones may well pick up more of the noise floor. So that kind of hiss, that just kind of general noise that is there. That can also be to do with what sound card you're using or how you're then connecting that into whatever you're recording into. I've actually found with the Zoom H5 recorder, if I'm not using an SD card that is a fast enough speed for it, the recordings on that end up hissing. However, if I switch the card over and use a higher megabytes per second card, that doesn't happen and I don't hear it. Michael, please do join in. I can see you're hopping in and out.
Yeah, share your expertise.
That green color, man. I'm all about the green. I just wow. That's a hot looking mic. I really like it.
I want all of them. I want them in every color.
Yeah, but I'm not sure. Can we buy it over here in the States?
I think so.
It looks like it's available over there, but I need to look. How much is it over there?
We're talking kind of around the 100 mark.
Okay.
As I say, affordable. And it's also one of these, another reason why, there were so many reasons for me to buy this microphone. I love it. But it's got a XLR to USB cable as well. Now, I've not used any mic that has got an XLR to USB. I'm generally an XLR to XLR connection person. So I'm really looking forward to using that and seeing how that sounds like directly into the MacBook.
That's fascinating. Yeah, because it almost sounds like it has a USB interface built into the cable, which if they included that with the microphone, that's really impressive.
Yeah, so you buy that separate. You buy the cable, you either buy the XLR cable or the XLR to USB cable. So but yeah, that's it's an interesting, it's the whole everything about it just caught my eye, literally caught my eye because of the amazing colors. Then it caught my ear because it sounded so great. But then to think about, as you say, that that difference in the way that it's been built and the way that it will work, with this USB connection. I know there is the microphone we were talking about before that's got the different connector on the back of the mic. Which one's that? You can either connect it by USB or XLR.
Well, there's a few on the market now. Yeah, Shure makes actually an SM7B version of that now. Rode has a pod mic that does that. There's the Samson Q2U. Audio Technica has the ATR 2100 and a couple others. So there's a number of combo XLR and USB mics out there. In fact, that's what a lot of companies are making nowadays. So it sounds like Sontronics went a little differently. They decided to stick with XLR, but they have the cable available if you need a USB connection and don't want to buy a separate USB interface. So that's kind of cool, I guess. I was going to talk about the pickup pattern of the microphone because I think that has a lot to do with the sound projection. When it comes to isolating the sound of your voice and sort of blocking out a lot of other sound around in the room or whatever, the pickup pattern of the microphone has a lot to do with it. And I did notice immediately that this microphone is a supercardioid where most microphones, podcast mics and stuff are cardioid. So that super means that it's got a more narrow focus of what it will pick up right in front of the mouth of it, whatever you call it, the front of it. And so it's going to do a better job of rejecting outside sound. So it totally makes sense that it's working well for that. So that's really cool. I'd like to try one of these sometime. It's a really pretty mic. And it sounds like it's a good quality mic too.
We also need to say thank you to our sponsors, Zealous, who are an absolutely awesome AI platform that myself and Madalyn have been using over the past couple of months, probably now, to create content from our Spaces audio so that we can promote our space each week. And it's lots of fun, isn't it, Madalyn?
Oh, yeah. If you're into repurposing your content, this is a must-have tool. It's great for creating audiograms from your spaces and even with other audios, like from a podcast. But Suze, I love how with those of us that host or co-host spaces, it takes away the friction of like, oh, I got to go download the audio and then I got to go upload it into this tool and go make some clips. It automatically takes this. Like I can go into, as soon as we're done with this space, I can go into Zealous and the download for this is already there. I can tap a button, get the transcript. I can tap another button and it shows me like clips it's already put together for me using AI. And then I can manually go create my own. I love how simple and easy this tool is to use. So I recommend this for anyone who could use something like this for their marketing. Go check out, there's a free trial. You can go to allthingsaudionpodcast.com/zealous or just tap on the nice pretty image in the nest. It takes you right to that link so you can try it yourself. For our listeners, if they're looking for something inexpensive, I think yours for the money, for the price, is a great one. You sound great. One of my tried and true favorites that's very affordable is the Audio Technica ATR 2100. Michael mentioned that when he was mentioning several different ones. And the reason why I know how great this is that years ago, I co-hosted a podcast with my good friend Cami Hoysa. It was called Communities That Convert. It was all about teaching people how to build online communities. And I had my Help Here 40, which is a pricey microphone. It's a $300 microphone. And she did not want to spend that. That was a lot of money. That's a big investment. Not everybody's going to do that. And she was new to podcasting. So I had recommended the Audio Technica ATR 2100 because it is a good solid microphone. You can do XLR or USB, a lot of flexibility. So she gets that and it's under $100 and you cannot tell us apart. The couple of years that we did this podcast, she used hers every week. I used my microphone. And when you listen to the podcast version of this, you're like, you could not tell us apart. It is that good of a quality mic to stand up against something like a Heil PR40. So super impressive microphone and not nearly as costly. So I'm going to put a link to that in the chat and I'll pop it up into the nest as well. But Suze, what you're using is very comparable to the Audio Technica.
Yeah, it sounds like it. And Audio Technica was always my go-to. And I think that's because that was what we used at the radio station. So, of course, what I did when I started out with the voiceover work once I'd left there was to buy what I knew. And I bought on eBay a secondhand version of what we used at the radio station. And I think at that point, that was when I realised the difference, you know, in spending like 350 quid and then trying to set it up in my bedroom wasn't quite the same sound as all the, you know, not only in the studio, but obviously the radio processing as well, which was fairly bass heavy. I used to sound like, you know, if I had gravitas to my voice with my newsreader voice, which, you know, I guess you don't hear when I'm talking just normally anyway, but I've never had that kind of sound in my ears again. And I think that really is just the radio processing that I was hearing kind of coming back at me and not really to do with the microphone. And so from there, I've tried out different microphones in the space. I've got to say, I'm loving this one this evening. I mean, I loved it beforehand, but I think it is fast going to become a firm favourite. And I did actually set myself a challenge. It was during 2020 when everything was awful. And I was like, right, every month I'm going to spend sort of 30 quid on eBay. That is my top notch. And I will buy whatever random microphone I can find for that much money. So I've got a collection of 12 microphones, and I had a big plan for this, right? There was going to be a blog. I was going to talk about them. I was going to use them in creative ways. I was going to have them on my wall as a kind of backdrop, all sorts of different things. Of course, I think 3 of them are actually still in boxes, sadly, and have never even been tried. But the love of microphones is definitely there. And I am certainly someone for switching them out, having a go, playing around with them. And once I got into the sound design stuff and the field recording things as well, finding, different microphones that really pick up in different ways, as Michael was talking about, they've got different pickup patterns, they've got different frequency responses, and it's an exciting hobby. I get way too excited when I talk about microphones.
I love it. Well, this is for anybody that is the same way. They should be coming here every week to All Things Audio, because this is the place to come geek out to all things audio. I have a question though for you, Suze. I thought of something to talk about. So last week we had Jennifer Navarrete here talking about NADPOD-POMO. It's kicked off a week ago, and she was here to discuss it with us. She's been doing it for many, many years, and you're doing it. I saw that you took a project you had previously done, and now you're putting an episode out every day as part of NADPOD-POMO. Why don't you tell us about that? Because I thought it was so cool.
Sure, yeah. So this is a project called Uncaged. I have to say, NADPOD-POMO, so the challenge, as Jennifer explained last week, is to put out 30 episodes within the 30 days of November. Now, I am down 3 at the moment, so I'm already playing catch up. However, it's okay. I've never taken part in NADPOD-POMO before, because the pressure of needing to keep up, day by day, I just thought I'd never be able to do it. I don't feel like that, even though I've fallen behind, but it is definitely pressure. Anyway, my project is called Uncaged. It is a podcast that I started during lockdown again. It was actually as we came out of lockdown, I found it quite difficult to go out of the house again. I was kind of struggling to just kind of walk around and be outside the house. And so one of the ideas my husband threw at me was, well, you'd go out if you weren't, if you had something specific that you needed to do. Why don't you go out and record some field recordings, and that can be the point to your walk for the day, and it will get you out the house, and you won't be concentrating on the fact that you hate every minute of being outside the house and COVID and lockdown and everything else. And I thought, okay, that's a fairly good idea. I can do that. So I then took that one step further, and I thought, I've really wanted to do some binaural recording with some headphones that I'd been given for Christmas, luckily. So I will do that. So I started to take a walk every day and make a binaural recording of my walk, as being the purpose of it. And then just kind of for my own accountability, I created that as a podcast so that I would have to post it each day. And I did that. I think we got to about episode 50. So I did it sort of 50-day stretch, and I managed that. I mean, NADPOD-POMO is 30, so I've had the practice. But yeah, so that was kind of the point of Uncaged. And then it stopped after those 50 episodes. And then when NADPOD-POMO came round, I thought, right, I would quite like to do this. And it might be a moment for me to resurrect that podcast and give it another go. I've learned a little bit more about binaural recording since then. I've learned a little bit more about field recording since then. So that's what I've done. I've kind of taken it into season 2, if you like, and I am trying to post a binaural recording every day during November. So the first few have been, the very first one was a walk, because I felt like I needed to take it back to its roots, to start it off again. And then we've had, I think that for this season, instead of it being every day a different kind of walking route, it is more about everyday sounds. So I've done that because the weather is hideous here in the UK right now, and binaural recording and wind noise is no fun. So I'm trying to cut down on the amount of kind of wind noise and stuff that might get in the way, and just doing kind of everyday tasks. But hopefully when you listen, you might hear things differently than you might have done if you were just getting on and doing that, whether it's the washing up or, I don't know, being in the office, those kinds of sounds. So for anyone who's not sure what binaural recording is, this is it's really a bit of audio illusion. So the idea is that you have a left and a right channel, so it is a stereo recording, but the microphones are literally either side of the head. Okay, so Neumann do a £6,000 fake head with microphones that are positioned in the place of the left and right ear. I'm not using one of those. I am using the much more affordable Roland earbud versions, which are about £80, I think. And basically I wear them as though they're headphones, and I can not only hear what's going on, but on the back of those headphones are two microphones, one either side. And when you listen to that back in your headphones, you will think you're hearing a 360 kind of audio surround sound of what I have recorded, because that's what the brain does when it puts those two stereo files together that are essentially a left and right channel that are panned quite severely. It's really clever. The first time I heard binaural audio, I was absolutely certain there was someone behind me, and there wasn't. I don't advise anyone to listen to it while they're driving because it can be extremely confusing. And I once made someone think that it was pouring with rain and thundering while the sun was out shining bright outside, because it is that confusing to the brain when you're hearing one thing and experiencing another. But that is part of the beauty of it and part of the reason that I love it.
Super interesting. I don't know. I like all this audio stuff. I find it fascinating, and I like learning more about it. This binaural is super interesting. The spatial, what I thought was cool is when it became available for AirPods Pro a while back. Do you remember that? Where all of a sudden they kept talking about like that whole spatial, and I just remember watching a movie with my AirPods and feeling like somebody was behind me, and it freaked me out a few times because of how they do the audio with that. And I'm like, how did they do that? So it's interesting stuff with all of this. I definitely want to learn more about all of it. When I saw your, I put in the chat here, the Bake Me a Scone from doing the NaPodPoMo. I was listening to it, but I wasn't listening with headphones. But it was just so interesting. Like, it's just listening to you you making scones, and then you had the picture of it and doing that with one of your children, and it was just neat. I thought that was just super interesting, and I know I wasn't getting the full experience because I didn't have headphones on at the moment, but it was just super cool.
I tell you what I have found with the AirPods Pro and that spatial sound and things. What I find with those, they throw me when they react to your head movement. So that I don't know. I don't like that very much. That can throw me. You're like, if I'm listening to one of my favourite songs, why do I want it to suddenly switch and like be more over here than over there? I'm not sure that I do. But I don't know. Somehow these binaural recordings and it being more an environment recording or a field recording, that works a bit more for me than perhaps hearing music doing weird things.
Right. I think I'm just used to all that now because I don't even notice all that spatial. And you'll see, like, it's interesting how on Netflix sometimes they'll show like this logo and it'll say spatial next to it. And it's like, oh, so I guess if I listen with headphones, it's more of a spatial, experience. I don't know. It's interesting stuff for sure. Thank you for explaining all this because it makes a lot more sense now.
Well, I wish I knew more about it. And this is the thing. It's like a massive learning journey. Like, I've loved audio forever, but there is always just so much to learn within it. And I disappear down rabbit holes and try and find things. And then I find out a little bit about this and a little bit about that. But I know there's so much more to learn, and I'm excited to hear it all.
Now, are you still doing the NaPodPoMo? Are you doing that every day?
I am going to keep going. Yeah. So I'm 3 down at the moment. But Jennifer was very insistent when she spoke to us last week, when she said that life happens and it's okay. As long as I get to the 30th of November and there are 30 episodes, I'm good.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be one a day. I really liked how she explained that, it's just getting the 30 done, because yes, life happens, and that's what makes, I think, something like that such a challenge, is that to sit here and, I mean, I think many people say, yes, I'm going to put out a podcast episode every day for the 30 days. And then they probably think they fail if something happens, something comes up, life happens, and they can't do it for a day or two. But I like how she explained to us last week that it is okay. And then, you just put them in when you can, but the goal is to do the 30 total.
Yeah, and I've got 3 that are recorded, but I just haven't had a chance to upload them and get them onto the mega feed. But they're there, and so I will send them out and I'll upload them and schedule them so they don't appear everywhere all at once, because they're also going out as a podcast, so they're still available on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and Amazon and all the different places. But yeah, I mean, it is a challenge. And I think when I was able to do 50 in a row of these before, obviously coming out of lockdown, I was a lot less busy. I was doing a lot less stuff. And also I did do a day. My flash briefing was a daily flash briefing that used to be available on Alexa devices, right? And I did that every day for nearly, I think it was just over 18 months that I did that.
I remember that was really cool. I mean, you were committed.
When I started that, I was batch recording. And, that is 100% what I would suggest anyone who's trying to do a daily podcast should do, is to take, a Saturday afternoon, record 30, edit 30, schedule 30, go, done. You don't have to think about it for the rest of the month until it gets to like the 3rd Saturday of the month, and then you do the next slot, right? That is totally the way to go. It did not end up like that, as you can imagine. And there have been times where I was literally about to get into bed and I was like, filled with fear, I haven't done tomorrow's flash briefing. And the problem with it was that because it was very specific, because it was a social media days calendar, so it was very specific in telling people the date and the social media sort of hashtag days for that date. So it was really obvious if I didn't update it. So yeah, it filled me with fear one too many times. And then 2020 happened, and it was one of those things that fell by the wayside, unfortunately. But it was a lot of fun. It was also a bit stressful. And at that point, I think it had to go.
Yeah. How are you putting this out as a podcast? Are you using one of the podcast hosts? Or are you using Zealous? One of the things that Jennifer talked with us last week is that with Zealous, you can turn your audio into a podcast and it will RSS it out for you. How are you doing it for this particular project?
I have got it set up on Podbean as the podcast host, which is where I moved it to ensure that it was live when it wasn't being updated. I moved it over there onto their free tier, just so I wasn't kind of paying for no need. And I should be able to upload, I think it gives me a couple of hours worth on the free tier that I can upload. Now, each of my files is 4 minutes and 33 seconds long, because I'm within the project as well. I was trying to kind of nod to John Cage's Silence, which is 4 minutes and 33 seconds. So the idea being that, John Cage's Silence, you listen to that for 4 minutes 33, and this was kind of perhaps what you wanted, some of the stuff you might hear during something that is apparently silence. So with them being such short files, I'm managing to get away with sticking with the podcast host that I'm on, so Podbean. So no, I'm not using Zealous, but I thought what was interesting about what Jennifer said around that was that people who are doing NaPodPoMo and using Spaces are able to create their feed directly in Zealous and then send it out, which is something I haven't explored on the platform. But Gregarious did talk to us about it the last time he was on here. And again, it's just another way of syndicating the space, sending it out, distributing, making sure more people hear it, because it literally takes the audio, and as long as you're kind of happy for that live replay to go out as a podcast as it is, it will do that for you automatically once your space is finished. So I thought it was interesting to hear. She said, I think 2 or 3 people, she said, were using spaces in one way or another for NaPodPoMo. And I would definitely suggest that anyone who wants to hear more about NaPodPoMo should definitely listen to last week's All Things Audio podcast, because Jennifer explained everything so well, and she is absolutely the queen of this event.
Thank you to all of our speakers who came on and shared so much great stuff. And we're available in all of your favorite podcast apps. We're out there, All Things Audio. You can also go to allthingsaudiopodcast.com as well.
You certainly can. And you can catch us here on Twitter and use the hashtag AllThingsAudio, and we'll pick that up throughout the week. So that's it for this week. But thank you so much to everyone that's been here in the space with us, and those of you listening. And we'll catch up with you next week.
Bye, everybody.